Sigmar story phase. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies across Iliatha this episode are...
Hi, my name is Paul, and did you guys know that this box set takes place in Washington, D.C.?
I did actually know that.
Yeah, because it's in the Arca Nova Trove, which is a convention happening this week in Washington, D.C. It's a joke.
Oh, that's fun. I'm Aaron, and this is not the greatest episode in the world. This is just a tribute. We couldn't remember to hit the record button on the... This is just a tribute.
And I am Doug, lore master of... Holy crap, is that a new Curseling model?
It is. And in this episode, we cover the lore of Arcane Cataclysm. You think Slaanesh is the only chaos god the Lumineth have to contend with? You think Sigmar is the only one leaving incredibly powerful artifacts haphazardly across the realms? You think that weird mole on your shoulder can't possibly be whispering terrifying secrets to you while you sleep? Well, you'd be wrong, my friend. Join us while we find other things you're also horribly mistaken about in this bit of lore in the Age of Sigmar. How are you tonight, my fellow Tretchlets?
Doing awesome. It's been a pretty good week.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad to hear it. How about you, Paul?
Doing fantastic. It also has been a great week for me.
Oh, nice. Well, I'll round it off and say it's been great for me, too. Wait a sec. Listeners, let me catch you up. There's a lot of things I need to explain to you. First and foremost, let's start with not the elephant, the YouTuber in the room. And that is today we welcome, this is a first, actually technically a second, which will be a point I bring up later, for the Mortal Realms today, we welcome a guest. And that guest is Doug from 2 Plus Tough. Doug,
hey.
I know you just said how you were, but I'm going to ask you again, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing real good. Thank you so much for having me on.
I am ecstatic, no less ecstatic than I was the first time.
I guarantee that it's absolutely true. He sounds exactly the same ecstatic as he was before.
Yes.
Now, listeners, you may be confused. Let me catch you up yet again. This is not the first time that we have, I was going to say recorded this episode. No, it is the first time we've recorded this episode, but not the first time we've had this very conversation. For the first time in my life, I had forgotten to hit the record button on an amazing episode that we tried to record a few days ago. And so in my despair, I wallowed and I thought, you know what, that's it. It's going to be lost to time and we're never going to do it again. But these two fine gentlemen lifted my spirits and convinced me, it wasn't very hard, to try again. And yet here we are to give it another stab, another shot. So I appreciate it.
I can't imagine having another episode that the patrons and the fans keep telling us, we need to edit that one. Do you want to add another episode that you have to edit again?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Good point. So we're going to give another spin. And so I'm going to try to bring, I and my co-host here will try to bring that same intensity and enthusiasm as we did before. But get ready for all sorts of inside jokes that you're probably not going to get because you didn't hear the first time.
There we go.
I apologize.
Buckle up.
Yeah. All right.
This is the Cool Kids Club.
You got it. So where to start? So where we normally start is I'll ask you, fine fellas, what you've been up to in the hobby. And let's get that out of the way. It's not getting it out of the way. It's an important part of the show, but let's start there. Paul, like I said last time, I'll have you start so you can show Doug how to do it. What you been hobbying on lately?
I am working on my army for Holy Havoc in Naperville, Illinois, October 22nd, 23rd.
Oh, fun.
So I am not revealing what my army is, but I'm having super ton fun building, converting, and writing a little story for it as well. So for those who are not in the know, Holy Havoc is run by Mr. Herner and the Holy Havoc Council. And it is an awesome narrative shaded tournament event in Naperville. So I am super pumped because I have never gone before and I get to go this year and I am super, super pumped. So
is this the team one or the solo one?
This is the team one.
Who's your teammate, might I ask?
My teammate is Steve Wren from the UK.
I mean, thanks for the phone call.
Oh, wow.
Okay. No.
Yeah, no, I'm super pumped, Leslie.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, it's like, he reached out and was like, hey, do you want to be my partner? I'm like, oh my goodness. To all the yeses, like I can't put enough yeses in the chat. Absolutely. So
that's awesome.
He's still yesing to this day. Actually, that's what you're doing with your hands. I can tell.
No, literally today I was like, okay, BT Dubs. Yeah, this is going to be awesome. We're going to have a great time.
Yeah, I went to last year's. It was terrific.
Yeah.
Right on.
I'm super pumped.
Naperville, right outside of where I was originally born and raised, and yet I have never been. Very cool. I'm excited to hear how things play out, and I can't wait to see yet another Spider-Fang army, Paul.
Yeah.
All right, Doug, our fine guest, what have you been hobbying on lately?
I've been doing a whole bunch. The big one for me lately has been Horus Heresy. It's just been a very fun system to get into and learn more about. And beyond that, I've been doing a bit of Conquest, which is a different game by the company Parabellum. And I've just been I've been kind of in that weird hobby drift where it's like I don't have a specific project. I'm just kind of building a kit here and a kit there for various game systems that I've been suckered into over the years. So, all over the place.
Nice. Well, I mean, that's a great way to keep momentum, right? You don't have to stick to the plan.
Absolutely.
Do you look like a kind of guy who's got a plan?
No.
All right. And on my end, I think last time we had this episode, I bemoaned the fact that I had one last Vine for Lady of Vines to do, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. But then in penance for ruining the last episode, I made myself do it. And so then now I have transitioned over to Dirthu, or rather a son of his. And it occurred to me that those dudes are also like a pain to file mold lines on, with all like the leaves and the branches and stuff. Ugh. Despite loving like the Sylvaneth range, I do not like assembling them. Ouch.
Yeah. How big of a faction are you going for? Like, it's just for Warcry or a full army?
Doug, you've got a lot to learn about Aaron here.
Okay. Is it just to be a shelf queen?
Essentially, yes. It's I put together everything that comes through, mostly battle boxes, though there was a bunch of stuff that came through the Mortal Realms magazine. And so like that, I have to put constraints on myself that way. So will I play them? No. Will I paint them? Probably not. But at the very least, I will assemble them. And as listeners know, I will put them in a box to put them on a shelf, never to be looked at again.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much your MO.
Yeah, to inevitably be a burden on my children when I shuffle from this mortal coil.
I mean, that's just a hobbyist, to be a burden on your children and your spouse when you die. Like, that is literally. Oh, man.
That's your best life.
I'm going to double back to something that Doug said, because I just finished reading Guilliman, Lord of Ultramar. I probably got the title completely wrong. The Horus Heresy novella. Today, and I really enjoyed it. And part of the reason that I started reading it was because you do a sweet Horus Heresy podcast.
I do, yeah. It's called The Emperor Protects. It goes up on my YouTube channel as well as any podcasting service I can get it on. And basically, we started breaking down the Horus Heresy. We did basically a book review of the first four, and then from there, we're going to dissolve into specific topics or battles or that kind of stuff. So just kind of spreading it around. But it's been a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's been a great fun.
Well, thank you.
First and foremost, I'll ask who's the we for the listeners who don't know.
Oh, my guest, my co-host is Dan Bears of the Cubic Shenanigans podcast, and he is just a terrific gentleman in the community. Can't say enough good stuff.
And it's because he's from Wisconsin. I mean, right? Like all of us are just fine gentlemen.
Actually, yes. In between our recordings, I went to Milwaukee and I met him there for Irish Fest, and we had a great weekend together. It was
perfect.
Yes, it was terrific.
Irish Fest is awesome on the Summerfest grounds. Oh man,
yes, yep,
the best.
Very cool. And so actually, this is a great segue, because now is probably where I was going to jump in, and we're going to do a little bit of commercials for ourselves, essentially. And so, Doug, you mentioned the Horus Heresy podcast and, things that you're doing on that front. But where else can they find you online that you want to plug while we got you here?
Yeah, honestly, the biggest one is just my YouTube channel. It is 2+ tough, as in like a 2-up save kind of thing. Just type that in, or honestly, if you just look up Age of Sigmar lore, I tend to rank pretty high. You'll see one of my videos for that.
Absolutely. Very cool. And I mean, not to piggyback up, but if you're going to do a plug, fine. All right, we'll do some plugs for our stuff here as well. Twist my arm, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate you giving me the in, though. And that, hey, listeners, you can find more episodes of this podcast and all of our other shows on the Mortal Realms at themortalrealms.com. You can email us your feedback at mortalrealms@gmail.com. Don't put the in there. I don't know if we have the email address, but use this one instead. You can find our Patreon at patreon.com/themortalrealms. or themortalrealms.com/Patreon to support the show, get early releases of the story phase, and access semi-exclusive content like the Pocket Realms, which are short story phases hosted by Davey and myself.
I love the Pocket Realms. They're super good. So don't overlook that just because they're short story phases, they're not great.
That makes one of us. And if you can't or don't want to pitch in monetarily, which is totally fine, I don't blame you, you can head on over to your podcast service of choice and give us a review. Throw as many stars as you want at that thing. Or you can just go ahead and tell a friend about the Mortal Realms, and thus ensure that you have a friend for life. And I also want to sneak in here real quick that we'll be talking about Arcane Cataclysm, like I said at the top, and I wanted to thank Games Workshop, who are so very, very kind to send us that box set from which we will discuss the lore within.
Absolutely.
All right. I think that covers the plugs. I appreciate your attention, everyone. I guess we can hop, unless there's anything else, we can hop right into that old story phase. Paul, if you do me the honors.
The story phase. In the story phase, we delve into the stories, characters, creatures, and environments of the 9 realms.
I think the last time we recorded this, I said something mean about Eric, and I can't remember what it was, and so I won't do it this time.
All right. Yeah, I didn't hear it either. Completely erased from my memory. So, Eric, I know you're at work right tonight, but like super never happened.
Isn't that cruel knowing that he's out there building communities, like rolling dice or trash talking him on the episode? How dare we?
Okay, you're lamenting scraping sprue lines off of Slaanesh, so it's just like kind of business as normal.
That's
cheers all around.
All top to bottom. All right, we're in the story phase. We're going to talk about Arcane Cataclysm, which is a nice little booklet story that came with the battle box, also called Arcane Cataclysm.
Yes. And
to catch folks up or to ensure that everybody's on the same page here, both literally and figuratively, I was wondering if we could spend some time talking about, I guess, maybe the story thus far or any sort of context in the greater Age of Sigmar story that would inform this book or would be worth knowing for those who wanted to, pick up the story and start here. What do they need to know to catch themselves up? Do you guys have any thoughts about the story this far?
Yeah, so honestly, the biggest one has to do with just the Lumineth Realm Lords' history themselves. That they have their own, they're kind of a side quest, if you will, in the greater scheme of Age of Sigmar history, where everyone off having their own Age of Chaos, and they were like, you know what? Things are going really well here in Hish. Let's mess it up, but in a fun way. And so I think the way that I usually describe it is 2 neighbors aggressively trying to make better fences than their neighbor. So there was nothing wrong. Things were fine. And then it was just one high elf being like, wow, my neighbor's got a great looking yard. I could do better than that. And then he makes this arcane fenceway and garden. And the next guy goes in wow, that's amazing. And he puts in, I don't know, spiked and barbed wire and makes it highly defensible. And this just kind of keeps going back and forth like a little echo chamber until nukes get involved, essentially. Again, no outside danger. This is all, we're doing it to ourselves. And then their what they call the Spire Fall, which is a mega event in their history, is when all of that collapsed and everyone got hurt real bad when all those nukes went off, essentially.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is they needed a better homeowners association to mitigate this fence building problem. I mean, they built it 6 inches because they weren't sure of the property line, and then they had to bring a surveyor out. It was just terrible.
I totally agree with you. If Teclis had put down his role of mage and became HOA manager, he's already got the smug face.
He would do so much less damage as an HOA manager than he does as a god.
Here's the deal. Not to give too much of a glimpse behind the curtain, but only an HOA manager would sit there and say, you know what, they needed more HOA, Paul. No one thinks that way. You're the only one who thinks that way. I don't know exactly what your
someone
role.
Who is an HOA manager, I totally understand. But
yeah, right. You're the only one who thinks that. Yes. The solution to this is more rules. Yes. No, you monster. So.
Wait. We have Teclis failing to save his entire race, but I'm the monster?
No, you're the villain here. Yeah.
Fair. I'll accept it.
Exactly. Yeah. You're treading on people's freedoms, and I just don't care for it. If I want to build an arcane nuke, I have every right to do that.
I'm sorry. I thought this was America. No,
I thought this was a Metrica.
You guys, I was definitely worried that this episode was going to fall into the same like patterns and ruts as the previous time that we did this, but no, we are already off the rails, and you can't do the same episode twice. Perfect.
Aaron, I got a problem. I got a problem here. Doug just made the best joke on a Mortal Realms podcast. Like, I'm not going to be able to. We got to do better. We've got to do better. All right.
It's that fresh blood. You got to get that fresh blood.
I mean, I'm totally going to use "This is Geometrica" constantly. That's such a wonderful quote.
Well, you like to make the memes, right? So you got to get the South Park, and he's all blood. I mean,
Randy, get him a high elf helmet.
That's pretty good. All right, so that is essentially historically what you need to know, and so that leads us essentially to the present day. And what we're seeing now for the Lumineth these days is that. We'd like to think that they've learned their lesson from their how the mighty have fallen. That's not obviously we all know that that's not necessarily true, but they to some degree are trying to fix the realms that they have then like destroyed. Now, of course, in fixing them, are they also making them worse? That argument could be made as they're burning or etching these runes into the landscape. But they're going about doing that both in Hysh and abroad as well. And then furthermore, we talk about, the metaphorical nukes after the Spire had fallen and essentially the realm, was torn apart to some degree. A lot of those magical artifacts and weapons and items and so on and so forth, they were lost to, I'm not going to say lost to time per se, though a little bit. They are scattered and strewn about and folks have lost track of where they are, right? And so to some degree, the Lumineth are also spending a bit of their time going out and trying to recover those things that are out there, whether they know where they are or they're just stumbling upon them. So that's a lot of what their time is being spent doing. That wasn't a sentence these days as well.
I'd love to add a little bit of context for the discussion too, which is that this is a battle box. And this is a battle box and not a starter box. And I think that's kind of an important delineation. So in a starter box, you wouldn't need to know anything about the game or anything about the background because you would get a massive book that would tell you the background of Age of Sigmar and every race and what happened. And this story of the Spirefall would, I guarantee, be in a starter book. But this is a battle box, and it's not intended to be a starter box. It's intended to be a little one-off story. And Doug, you had a really great summary of what you describe these little one-off stories as.
Oh yeah, just like when you look at your battle tome, if you go to like the timeline, where timeline's a strong word, but it basically just splits it up into ages. Those like little one paragraph, sales pitch of an idea is essentially like one of those has been taken and blown up into a core set to allow Games Workshop to sell us stuff, basically. And so that's kind of how I look at these, is just they're self-contained stories. They don't have an impact on the mega thing. It's just a snapshot into what's going on.
I mean, I support those little paragraph one stories because the Spider King is a canon character because of one of those little paragraph short stories. So like, I'm all in on exploring this specific one. I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's awesome.
I love the zoom aspect of it. There was that little short. I mean, this isn't a short story in one of those books, though sometimes they are actually. And maybe that's a point worth mentioning. Is it's maybe chicken and the egg, which happens first, but it's not uncommon that these battle boxes do end up being those little like blurbs in the timeline. I feel like, again, I want to say one of the Daughters of Cain ones was like a blurb. Now I don't know what came first, the battle tome or the battle box, but this is that prime example of taking one of those and then zooming 200% to see like the actual story beats and the events.
Absolutely,
love it.
And it's important to know that you can do this with any story that you want. If you and a buddy just read something that sounds cool, do it to it.
Exactly.
Also a great point, and because there are so many of those story beats like that they won't ever explain that story. So hey, listener, if you don't do it, no one else will. There you go. Make it your own. Stake that claim. This is my little story, is what you'll say.
If you don't convert a Mega Gargant into the Spider King, nobody else.
Cowards.
So I had to do it. I absolutely had to do it. There was no choice.
So that's Paul's dibs. Nobody else can have that one.
Nobody else can have it. It's mine. Nope. It's mine in perpetuity. It's my canon character. It's mine.
TM. All right.
Exactly.
So I think that to the best of our ability sums up the context of where this story is coming from. So let's hop into it. Where do we find ourselves? Where do we start in the events of Arcane Cataclysm? What kicks this off? Do you guys have thoughts on that?
Well, are introduced into a city that was a name on a map until today.
Yes, the city of Quintessence is actually having a party. It's Sigmar Fest, which I think we did a quick roundup last time. But what is your Sigmar Fest food of choice, gentlemen?
I didn't answer, but good question.
Now I did say last time schnitzel because Sigmar is German.
Yeah, true. I mean, I like a good corn dog. Oh no, I remember my answer. It was something deep fried that ought not be deep fried, I believe is what I came up with.
Yeah. I feel super compelled though. You just went to Irish Fest, and like Irish Fest, if we had a Sigmar Fest at the Milwaukee Fairgrounds, like I feel like we would have to come up with something super sweet. I feel like
is schnitzel not sweet enough for you, my friend?
I mean, schnitzel's not sweet. It's really kind of a savory,
It's really more of a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with sauerkraut. You got to know that there's like some weird,
but it's like weird sauerkraut. It's probably like I don't know. It's formed out of a wheat bee's butt or something. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a tiny amount of the old world that's put into every single bowl.
You somehow made sauerkraut worse, and it was already pretty bad.
Oh, sauerkraut's the best.
It's great, especially on brats.
You guys,
you're not going to win this, man. I'm Polish.
I'm gonna turn my Wisconsin card in.
Yeah, your Cubs hat is showing. I was just going to say.
And you got your Brewers hat on this one. We're enemies. So yeah, very cool. Sigmar Fest, we're starting in. I will see you fall.
Quintessence,
in Quintessence. So tell me more about this here town.
Yeah, essentially we are very much introduced. Like they kind of give a cool little backdrop to the Lumineth, and then during this party, when everyone is distracted by the events and the hanging out and stuff, the festivities rather, there is a Tzeentchian cult that has infiltrated this city. That has begun to fester and grow. And they're basically looking for an opportunity to go out and get some of those long sealed away weapons and nukes and stuff like that the Lumineth have spread around the realm of light. And so the way this happens is a curseling with a freckle from hell comes and tells him this is the new curseling with the what's the thing they call him?
Tretchling.
I don't know why
Tretchlet.
For the record, Aaron introduced us all as Tretchlings, so I don't know if I'm offended or just
as Tretchlets, and it's because we're the smart ones. Like we're the ones whispering into the listener's ear. Is what we are.
For some reason I just always read it as Tiznich, and I'm like Tzeentch almost. I don't know. It's just a weird thing, and I'm just like,
all right, that's canon. You can TM that one if you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. But it's basically a familiar that grows out of your body. To put it simply, and this one in particular is telling the curseling, hey, here's the location of a treasure. We're going to sneak out. The whole cult gets together and they make their way out of the city under the shroud of parties and stuff like that.
So I one of the things that I really enjoy is that the Sigmar's Day celebrations are about, potentially having alcohol or some other substance that intoxicates. And so one of the questions that I put in the outline is like, are they literally just watching everybody all the time just in case they leave? And the answer is yes, they are literally watching everyone. The Lumineth are watching everyone all the time just in case there's suspicious activity. We just got to make sure that like everything is all taken care of. And they notice that, hey, these guys are trying to slip out. And this is super weird because like, I don't know, they're supposed to be completely contained in this prison that I call the city of Quintessence. And what's going on now?
You're stepping out of your minimum security hovel.
Exactly. You paid a lot of money to make sure that you had prime rib tonight. Come on.
Exactly.
Come on, people.
Yeah, keep them subdued. So yeah, I don't know if we mentioned at the beginning, but so Quintessence is, I think, in Zintal, right? Which is the core, most core-word continent in Hysh, where if there are humans living in Hysh, oftentimes it's on this continent. And so this is I think, predominantly, or at least a large, sizable population of humans in Quintessence, which is from whence the cult, I think, traditionally pulls their people from. So noteworthy in that regard.
As opposed to Star Wars, where if there's a bright center of the universe, you're on the planet farthest from. If there's a bright center of Hysh, you're on the continent closest to.
Yeah.
And one of the things is they give us a couple of names. So the cult of Tzeentchians are called the Sons of Quintessence, which I thought was a cool name because the definition of quintessence is the most perfect or typical example of quality or class. And I'm telling you, sneaking out of a city is not really quality or class in my book. But, you know.
I mean, breaking curfew is the most classic cool kid crime.
It is true. Oh, man, you're not wrong.
Though leaving a party is not as cool as like sneaking into a party, though, right?
That is that.
Like
you know what?
The wrong direction.
Yeah, you got me. That's like sneaking out to go play D&D or something like that. I get it.
Yeah. Which I have done and will do again, probably.
So we get a couple of names here. So the Curseling is named the Venestrati, which is kind of a cool name. It reminds me of throwing somebody out of a window, but not, because you're attached to him, so you can't throw him out of the window because you have to throw yourself out a window, and then you'd probably fail, and then it would be auto semi-defenestration, and that's just something that nobody wants.
I just keep thinking of all the awesome jokes we had last time, and I can't remember exactly what they were, but man, we had some laughs, didn't we? We had some good laughs.
You got everyone listening should go give us a 5-star just because of how good our jokes were last episode.
Yeah, they were so good. Believe me, trust me, they were top notch, top shelf.
Then we have the new model, the Illuminator. I'm blanking.
Enlightener, right?
Enlightener.
Yes, Stenarii Enlightener.
Yeah, the Denesia War Widow. I'm going to go with Denesia. I'm sorry.
I think that's right.
I'm sorry if that's wrong, but that's what I'm going with.
It's made up. You got it right. You nailed it.
She's not a real person. She can't. You don't need to apologize to her.
Exactly.
She'll never hear this.
Denesia, you'll never hear this, and you don't care. So,
you're beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you have a kind soul, Denesia.
You have a kind soul, and also you've got like the best female head that we've received for Age of Sigmar. So
that is a fair, accurate thing.
Oh, so pretty. I want to use that in so many pirate conversions. I mean, who doesn't want a female pirate with braids? I ask you, Aaron, do you want that? No, you don't, because you don't do conversions.
I spit on them. So she's the one. She was the one who was creeping on like the Tzeentchian cult, right? So as they were sneaking out, she was the one that caught I'll say quote unquote sight of them sneaking out, and essentially it's that observance, I guess, that's going to kick off the plot of this book. But we'll get there in a sec. Any other names you wanted to bring up, Paul?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring up one last name, and this is kind of an interesting thing. We get another character, but there's not another character in the box for the Tzeentchians. But the character is a name called Corkatween. Let's go with Corkatween. Which is a leader of the coven. So the Venestrati, the Curseling, is actually not the leader of the coven. He's kind of like an advisor. And Corkatine is the leader of the coven, but we don't actually have a model for a hero that we would assume that this character is, because this character is a Tzeentch beastman. So that's kind of like a little departure from the box. And this was something that I enjoyed kind of immediately, is that, we're actually getting a little bit more story than the box would tell me were I looking at the miniatures.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I thought we covered the fact that it was just one of the Enlightened. I don't want to dive too deep into this, but I just assumed
we covered it last time. We didn't cover it this time.
I assume. Okay. So I read this as him being a Zangor Enlightened, like the unit champ of the Enlightened. And I guess it doesn't say specifically one way or the other, but that's how I'm gonna play it.
Well, you know,
I swear there's going to be
it's going to be irrelevant here pretty soon, but like the different ranks in the Tzeentchian hierarchy within their own battle tome are super interesting because they're all very informal because it's all secretive. So like, I don't doubt that like it's probably a bit weird. Sometimes you might seem like a shaman, and other times you might seem more like just a leader dude, a generic.
And then like you're like, well, so I'm in charge of this cult, and someone's like, whoa, no, I'm in charge of this cult. No, I'm in charge of this cult.
Exactly.
It's the weird like Spider-Man pointing meme.
The other thing is though, like, so the Curseling, like all the Tzeentch people just kind of like hide in plain sight, but they wear robes and stuff. But like the Curseling, like you're not going to be able to hide in plain sight with another like literally familiar coming out of your shoulder. So like, what job was he doing that people were like, oh, it's totally fine. You've got like, 17 more inches of neck than I expect from you, but it's okay. We totally think you're cool, and you're not going to be found out as a Tzeentchian archetype.
I just like to picture like the Tretchlet just like hugging the body of like his brother, like he's just squeezing it right. And then
it's a lot more loving than I was expecting. But like,
I have no reason to believe that it's not loving, right? Like, I mean, for all we know, it's a very like caring and like tender relationship. At least I hope so. At least mine would be. I would like to think so, because I'm the Tretchla in this situation. All right. So, on that weird note, dare we continue?
They've escaped, so they are no longer in Zintel, which is coincidentally where Godsbane takes place. So that's kind of a fun little thing. We just had a novel released talking about this little area. And now we go on to Iliatha, and we go to a city in Iliatha. And Aaron, why don't you tell me a little bit about that city?
Oh, but I don't know how to. Is it Tor-Katais? I believe we said. Anyways,
yep,
so
nailed it.
I mean, he's so supportive. God, we need him talking on every episode. And so the cult sneaks out of the quintessence, and they take to the seas, right? And so they waylay some boats, and they ship off to the continent of Iliatha. And so the first place they roll up on are like this coastal city of Tor-Katais. And so it's it once was this city full of these soaring towers on the coast. But during the Spirefall, those towers came down, those spires fell, so to speak. However, now it is in the process of being rebuilt again through labor sort of borrowed from Zintel. It's this human laborers that are aiding the Lumineth in rebuilding the city. And so they're making progress on it. And one of the hallmarks of this town or city is that these towers have spaces or openings through which the wind can blow, and not just wind, but like wind spirits. And in doing so, they create beautiful wind music, which is neat. I mean, that's a great way to, integrate the elemental spirits of these regions, especially the air spirits here, and it makes it sort of an interesting tidbit about this little city that we may not have known. And so I like expanding on and developing all sorts of places that we see on these Hish maps, which I think this is yet another city that we might not have known too much about before.
Absolutely. They've been doing a great job with that a lot with Gur as well. When it came to like the Gnarlwood map from Warcry.
I mean, Gur more than most, in fact, because so much of our attention is spent there right now. So
of course,
that's a prime candidate for that.
One of the things that I really enjoyed is that they actually had Quintessence and Tor-Katais in the core book, in the map they have for Hish. And the other thing that I really enjoy is they actually changed the map for this battle box to make Tor-Katais and the Curse Lands into their own little box outs. And they replaced the previous box outs that were in the core book. So I love that they customized the map specifically for this battle box. I don't think I've seen that happen before. And I know it's a small detail, but I love that they like made the effort to make it customized. And I thought that was super fun.
Oh, you mean you're not mad that they retconned 2 years worth of lore?
Not in the Mortal Realms. We're all about those retcons. I mean, we retcon our own stuff like pretty regularly.
To live is to retcon. I understand.
Oh, you retconned this. You destroyed my narrative.
Exactly.
I don't care. I like, unless your narrative was like super cool, like super fun, I think it could withstand some little, changes in graphic design. But, it is what it is. And one of the fun things, completely switching topics, is I didn't realize that humans were in Iliatha, because I thought they were all completely confined to Zintel, because that's what I read in the core book. So does anybody want to enlighten me as to why we have humans in a place where the core book says they're not supposed to be, because that's totally a retcon?
Oh, they got green cards.
Work visas.
Yes, the Lumineth or the Elves of Hish allow them to be there like in very small groups and are in circumstances like construction, map making, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
The lower base like manual labor that they wouldn't get there. The Lumineth wouldn't get their hands dirty doing themselves, which I mean, I got some clean hands, my friends. Like,
I have a YouTuber's hands, which means they're the softest thing that's ever been touched by man. Yeah, I guess.
hands. So the cult rolls up on the boats that they'd presumably stolen or borrowed or whatever, and they assassinated or killed just a couple of the dock workers, the dock guards, and they make a landing here in Tor-Katais, and then they spread out through the city, and they seem to disappear. And so the Lumineth that have been trailing them, so the Cenari Enlightener and her forces that she's brought along with her, notably, and also her mage sister as well, twin sister. They've been hot on their tail on the cult of Tzeentch, the Sons of Quintessence, but they lose them in the city, and they don't know what to do. This might just be the end of their adventure. Oh, shucks. Paul, what happens next?
Well, number one, I'd like to go back just a half second.
I knew you did.
Look, so we've got a character in the book, the Enlightener, but then we have another character introduced in the narrative, just like we have in the Tzeentch side. Interesting, but we don't have a model for this character. So we have Denisia War Widow and her twin Liathu. So this was the first point at which I'm like, oh, this is super interesting. Like I can kind of accept that there's a Zangor shaman out of one of the Enlightened, but this other character, Liathu, not in the book, not in the models whatsoever. What is going on here? We got something a little bit different, and I really appreciated that. I love these battle box little stories. I literally beg Aaron every time. I'm like, Aaron, tell me what's going on. I mean, like, I know that I'm gonna buy it, but like, I need it now. And
I'm very withholding, honestly. So
read it to me slowly.
Killing me softly.
Exactly.
That's a buck.
It is a buck. You're not wrong. And so I really enjoyed that they kind of went out of the box here, literally out of the box, and added two characters that were not in the box into the narrative. So I super love that. But the other thing is that we have a new little story, a little character introduced here, which is that we have a wind spirit calling itself Parashai. I'm going to go with Parashai.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. So, Jess Bickham, I apologize if I pronounced it wrong. Really, Phil Kelly is the one who has the pronunciation guide. I hear he literally has like a guide of this is how you say this.
It's in a White Dwarf.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think Parashai is in there, but you know, if you want to produce that, Phil Kelly, I would totally buy it at number one, and number two, read it. And so we have Parashai visits them, and he is a wind spirit. And he says, "Oh, Beachy Dubs, they went that way. You should totally chase them that." Then they also include a little thing that it says it cannot go with them, for its Huracan master Harantio lies sleeping off his latest overindulgence in a dockside tavern. Second time of overindulgence mentioned in this book, so I'm already loving it because like that sounds like super fun. We got Sigmar's Day, then we got a bar that just, you know, serves cool things, so why not? But the interesting thing is that Huracan Master Harantio is actually mentioned in Broken Realms tech list.
Yes.
And he's supposedly a mythical character, but here we have his wind spirit actually showing up. Parashai saying, dude, there's a problem. We're going to fix it. Also, my guy can't come, but it's okay. I can give you the information that you need. Yep. So I love that we have a callback to Broken Realms. I love that they took the time to do a little search into their internal lore engine, which I assume they have, and be like, who's somebody that I can reference here? Because I love it. I love that you took a character that was a one-off and said, he's not going to be a one-off. I'm going to incorporate him into the next narrative, because it's amazing that we now have the depth of story in Age of Sigmar that we can call back to other characters that we've mentioned before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we haven't had that really before besides named characters. And this is not a named character. This is just a lore-based character that we heard about. So super props to you for pulling this one out of the hat. I love it.
I mean, he did just kind of show up to be like, hey, they went that way, bye. Like, that's all he really did. But
more than most, right? More than Techless did.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, well, you got me there.
But to Paul's point, to echo how enthused I am by reading about folks like this, right? Like, oftentimes we get so many like one and done throwaway names, especially in books or like formats like this, right? It's just, I mean, which is flavor, and I love reading about. I mean, I love reading funky names. The fact that this is two data points, you can draw a line between the two, and you got to wonder if maybe they've got, I don't know if they've got plans for this guy, or is this something that's going to show up repeatedly, which is pretty neat. Plus, he's fun and unique in that, like, he's this mythological, like, tall tale like type character for the Lumineth, who don't necessarily lend themselves to like the whimsy behind like that type of, I don't know, lighter, or like it has a lighter air. Well, not lighter air, because right, they have a whole bunch of units that are lighter than that's not the point, but like he's not nearly as serious, right? And so like to introduce that into this army, it's a space that maybe even the old high elves didn't have room for, but maybe now that we can have a little bit more of this I don't know, monk like opportunity to expand what it means to be this, I'll say, lowercase high elf, but in this case the Lumineth, which is pretty neat. So it offers opportunities to diversify what we think we know about the Lumineth, which is pretty cool in my book.
When they released this model, the Huracan Windmaster, everybody was like, "Oh, it's the Monkey King," and now we have a character who's functionally actually the Monkey King. So again, super props.
Complete with exposition dump and all as he flies past you.
I didn't understand the Monkey King reference the first time you made it. I still don't understand it now. But I'm sure folks will. It's not for me.
Okay, how about this one? Goku riding the cloud. How about that?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
there you go. I like that one. Cool. So, with aided by the information given to them by Parashai, the Wind Spirit, they are able to regain or like follow the tracks of the Sons of Quintessence. And it turns out they had left this city and headed east, young man, out into the sort of the wilds or like the wastelands of Iliatha, in pursuit of artifacts that they may find out there.
This was one point that I had a hard time with, which is that west, east, those aren't directions that we typically hear in Age of Sigmar. We hear coreward and we hear edgeward. And I wish that west and east would have just been replaced with coreward and edgeward, because that's a super specific Age of Sigmar direction. And I wanted that there instead of east and west, because that's super our world directions.
Mundane, banal.
What would you say? I would say voidward if you're going outward. That's what I'm thinking. I think that could be cool sounding.
You do Coreborn or Voidborn. That'd be kind of fun.
I mean, yeah. Or if you have an equator that separates inward and outward, you could have innies and outies, like belly buttons. But
you guys are just giving these away for free. What are you doing?
Yeah. These are Patreon bonuses things. Yeah. You guys insane.
God, I remember my first podcast too. All right, so they head off into the wastes of Hysh, and this is where we get a glimpse, or we get more sense of, right, well, not everything is hunky dory in Hysh, and there's plenty of the landscape out there is relatively inhospitable, even though we're still kind of close to the core, although we're not on the core continent per se. And they trek out towards this Honori seal, which is, we'll talk about a seal for a second, but this region used to be this lush, verdant landscape where there's full of like golden amber waves of grain, essentially, golden fields of grass here. But it was under control or under protection from this Age of Myth Magi from back in the day, and she thought, you know what, this is such a gorgeous land of plenty, I need to protect it. And so what she ends up doing is she back then in the Age of Myth summoned these Ifriti, thinking that she might protect it from like disease or corruption or something like that. However, the Ifriti flat out wipe the place out and like burn it to a crisp and just lay waste to the place, thus ruining it. And this was, long before even the Age of Chaos necessarily even struck, right? So this is, again, the pride goeth before this particular fall anyways. And in doing so, for the most part, this land has been unhospitable since then. More recently, there was an attempt to contain this, destruction to this region, and the Lumineth did what Lumineth do, in which they dropped a giant seal on top of it, burned it into the landscape, hoping to contain the destruction. And that's, I think, where it gets the region gets its title. This Honori seal is the seal that is sealing this place in. And I am running out of things to say about it. Do you guys have anything to add about this region or what was happening here?
No, I kind of think of it as almost like we have in our real world the Nazca lines. Like, you don't see them when you're walking around, but if you look from an aerial view, you'll see these big symbols carved into rocks and stuff like that. It's basically the same thing.
I was thinking more crop circles, but I like yours.
You would totally see that. You got some terraforming machines that are like going all jungle. You would totally see these actual letters. And that's what they actually are. They are literal letters. So Honori,
Yes.
my understanding is that is it a letter of the Lumineth alphabet that is literally scored into the flesh of the realm.
Oh, right on.
And that's where we're going.
One of the battle tomes, I think, had a couple of runes like spelled out, right? And they showed how the different components of the runes like meant different things at different, like, you know, different pen strokes, so to speak, like meant different things. I never studied it that close, but I know it exists. They're out.
So the other quick point I'd like to make is that I love that they mentioned the Ifriti, because the Ifriti were actually models that were released for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. We had 4 different ones. We had an earth, air, water, and fire Ifriti. And they were classic models that were released in metal. And I constantly considered buying them because I was thinking about converting an Araby army back in the day. And I never ended up getting my hands on them. But they did make a reappearance in Dreadfleet, of all places, when they had an Araby ship and there was an Ifriti, a wind Ifriti, that was blowing air into the sails, which is why they were able to do a little bit more maneuvering than the other ships. So I love that super classic callback to Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
I've only ever heard of fire ones. I didn't know there was other kinds.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, let this be a lesson to you that whenever you want something, do not hesitate to buy it. Buy it immediately. Doesn't matter what it costs. Just get it.
Exactly.
You're not wrong.
You will always regret it if you do not. That's what I've learned.
Yep. You lose every box of models you don't buy.
That's so good.
That's literally Aaron's motto from now on, right?
Hey, look at this face. Does this face look like it has regrets? No, because look at those shelves, my man.
The bank account might.
Bank accounts are just a number, man.
Bank accounts go up and down. Models, they last forever.
They last forever. Oh man, we should make motivational posters like a cat on a wire, but you know, bank accounts go up and down. Models last.
You do
forever.
a Griffhound on a wire. It'd be great.
Yeah. Oh gosh, man, we are advocates for this hobby. Don't you forget it. All right, so they're heading out into this blasted region outside, essentially outside Torquatis to the what is it? Not Corward, Edgeward from the city. And as they pass through this Honori Seal region, they get closer and closer to the actual, I don't know, site or home of this ancient Age of Myth magi, and they find that it's actually a series of tombs, and so they were seeking this Arcana trove, or an Arcanova trove, and they believe that this trove of magical artifacts are found within these tombs.
So these are the tombs of Sarandua. So as we kind of mentioned earlier, there's a character in this story who has a bunch of clones, because back in the day, clones weren't something that were legal until everybody realized that they were going to go super crazy and kill everybody, and it was going to set off, all kinds of problems with the Age of Chaos. But it's totally okay until they realize that, oh yeah, this was a really bad idea. And so we have this character called Sarandua that in the Age of Myth, she created all these different spawns of herself. And as each one died, she apparently buried them, and she buried them with the magic items that they had collected during their life. And so that's what this Arcanova Trove is all of these incredible magic created items that the clones were using or were in possession of at the time that they died. And so this is one thing I wish that they had maybe done a little bit differently, or just done narratively a little bit more interesting, because it really smacks to me of a storm vault. Yeah, it's not protected, and I wish it was something a little bit different. But like, not that it takes me out of the story, but it's just like, oh, this is another storm vault, but it's a bunch of tombs. But instead of the tombs being protected by something, they're being just left out in the open. Okay, I get it. This is how we're moving the story forward.
Yep.
He doesn't have a monopoly on storm vaults or the storm vault concept. Like I said at the top, anybody can lose. Just forget where magic items are. I've done it. I'm sure you've done it. Heaven's the best.
Okay, but like, at what point is it like no one in this setting stood a chance simply because their heroes couldn't like get it together and use like I don't know, a junk drawer or something like that. Like
it's like, don't just bury it, give it to me. Like let me use it.
Give it to someone.
Defend my family, but no, you're gonna bury it in the dirt instead while Cass chomps on my kids. Like
let's not classify junk boxes as bits boxes, because then I'd be in super in trouble, because I have so many Age of Sigmar magic items in my bits boxes. It would be absolutely terrible, and I would be completely destroyed if anybody figured it out. Don't come to my house and steal all my bits, please.
If I opened all of your kitchen drawers, how many of those drawers would I find bits within? I'm not wholly bits, but they're not completely bits, but how many would I find some bits in there?
Probably at least 3.
I bet you 3.
Yeah, at least 3.
Next time I come over, I'm snooping.
Oh, crap. We're in trouble. One of the interesting things, though, is that they mentioned that Sarandua had 5 clones, which is interesting because you're only allowed to have 1 clone now in Iliatha, and Iliatha is the continent of cloning. Is the continent?
Yes, I believe so.
I forget what's going on, right? So we don't have that many clones to find stuff, but apparently we got some like super, super sweet loot to find and to figure out what's going on. And one of the things that I enjoyed about the story is that we don't find out about this because of the curse thing per se. We find out about it because of the Treachlet, because the Treachlet has this knowledge of there's these super sweet magic items that you totally need to go and find, because they're going to help you to figure out how to destroy everybody and take over the world like Pinky and the Brain, but it's Tzeentch. So go have fun and go kill things.
Okay, well now I have to picture the Treachlet is voiced by the Brain, and
all right,
I think that's a great call.
Thinking, oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I'm glad we did this twice. We should do every episode twice, because we really ring this thing out and double up on the great ideas.
Yeah, you guys have fun with that. I'm gonna go back to my show.
See ya. All right. Essentially the 2 warbands or whatever you want to call them, the 2 armies arrive at these tombs of Sarandua. Tzeentch got there first, and they find these tombs, and they're about to search them, but then they look up on the horizon, or up on the on the dawn of the 3rd day. They see up on this this cliffside, they see that the Lumineth found them.
Dawn coming from the east.
Yeah, and so they're staring them down, and like there's a pregnant pause as the camera shifts back and forth to each one of them, getting closer and closer to their eyes as they're at the last moment, the Lumineth charge. The sister mage dies. Don't worry about that. Not a big deal. And then we jump into the battle box proper, where the actual game takes place. And I'll pause there. Do we need to? Have we missed anything? Do we need to add anything else to the story before we jump into the?
No, I think that's fine. It's really, all of this is just pretext for giving us a where and a why for a battle. And that's all these little 2-player boxes are intended to do, is just pit forces together. And so it does a reasonable job. It gives you all the backstory you need for it. I thought it was pretty well done up to this point. Because from here, you and your opponent start determining what happened.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that I really enjoyed is that they introduced this Iliatha character, and then they kill her before the actual battle happens.
Yeah, she got punked real hard.
Yeah, she got super punked, like, oh, I'm going to point at you and you're going to die. And you're like, okay, I die now. But I really enjoyed that they added characters that weren't in the box to add more narrative interest. I don't remember them doing that previously, and that's something that I really enjoy. If you're like, I got a cool story and I want to tell it, and it's not included in the plastic, but it's okay because we'll have fun and we'll make it work. Even if they kill those extra characters immediately. No,
and they have no.
I'm totally fine with that, because it adds a little bit of interest. It adds a little bit of tension of like which character is actually going to die. Right? It could have been Denezia. It didn't have to be Iliatha. So,
well, I think Iliatha is the continent. Is that the name of the other person too? I can't remember what the other person's name is.
It's something very similar. I understand.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so the Lumineth take the first casualty. Tzeentch gets first blood, but then the battle is joined for real. No more cat and mouse. We're actually whatever cat and mice do when they reach each other. And so this introduces us to the first battle, essentially, right? And so it's both a fight. They're at each other's throats, but there's more to it than that, because they're both struggling and looking to find these artifacts as quickly as possible. A, to get there before their enemies do, but B, hopefully to maybe even use them in the fight that they have in front of them. And so that's what we see initially, is this battle, combination battle, and scavenger hunt, essentially, which all the best scavenger hunts are a combination battle scavenger hunt. Everybody knows that. And so actually, Paul, did you see that this weekend there was the Alice in Wonderland scavenger hunt downtown? I don't know if you got downtown.
I found a couple of things that were in the scavenger hunt without even intending to, so I must be really good at scavenger hunts.
Yeah, and you also killed a couple people, so like, I mean, super good.
Yeah, exactly. Hunts. Same thing.
Don't tell anybody.
I just told the tens and tens of listeners of this episode. So that's the small, I guess it's skirmish essentially, because they're of two minds, hunting for artifacts and also trying to, kill the other guy who's also searching for artifacts.
Yes.
Doug, I haven't heard from you in a while. Where do we go from here? What's next?
So we have this big old fight with magics going crazy as they keep getting closer and closer into this what is essentially a grave / mausoleum. I don't know how else to word that.
Those are both good words.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And then they come to are you on the shattered land part?
Yeah, right. So they find the artifact, and that's essentially where we go from. So the race is on to find what they can, and guess what? It wouldn't be a good story if they didn't find any artifacts. And so what they digging through the stand, they are rummaging through one of the tombs, and one of the Zinchian cultists, hand aloft, shows that they found this. Ooh, it's got an item. This realm shatter prism. Essentially, everybody
yes.
Turns out that's what they're looking for. And there's triumphant music. The music swells. Maybe some Final Fantasy Victory tune gets played, and it's cut short immediately because as soon as the realm shatter prism is found, beams of light start geysering up from the earth. I believe in it, if I'm termed for it. Shafts of arcane magic light erupt and start immolating friend and foe alike. So whoops. Okay, maybe that was bad idea to be pulling this out because now there is an eruption, a shattering. Everything's gone to heck all about, and so it introduces a whole new element to this battle because now the artifact's been found. It's a matter of who gets to keep it, and that essentially is the phase 2 of this battle that we see here is trying to wrest control of this prism and not losing too many of your allies in this light eruptures. As the fight continues. It's very dramatic, everyone.
Just imagine how many little things that you would have to kill in World of Warcraft in order to make sure that this rare item drops in front of your character so you can find it. It's be a massive amount.
Too real, Paul. Too real. And actually, you're right. I do have to go grind, so I'll catch you guys later. This was good enough, right? This was we got it. We did a pretty good job, I think, thus far. Because Wrath of the Lich King Classic comes out in a couple weeks, and I got to get ready.
Nerd.
Yeah. So the prism is found. People are getting burned up left and right. What happens next? Who's got thoughts for me?
Arcane Duel.
Yes, they have a full blown Dragon Ball Z fight, complete with exposition and everything. There's a really great fight scene here at the end. The artwork for it looks great, and then. It's called the Sorceress Showdown is the name of the mission. And basically, I don't know. I want to get your guys' opinion about this. So I love wacky missions. And the way that they spelled this out is that magic has completely destabilized around them. It basically Control A deletes the how magic works and comes up with its own system, which is just rad. What do you guys think?
I love it because this is straight up almost no changes made. This is how magic worked in the 5th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. We had these little magic cards that you would cast, and hey, guess what? We got a new spell lore that you can cast just for this scenario. Mm-hmm. And then you used to roll 2d6, and that was your power dice, or if you were on the opposite side, that was your dispel dice. And you could cast as many spells as you wanted to, or dispel as many spells as you wanted to, as long as you had dice. And I read this, I'm like, this is super fun. And I remember playing this in 5th edition. It was super crazy and wacky because you could make anybody a spellcaster. And I thought it was super fun and super narrative to include this in a place where you have a ton of magic just living on in the world and everything would be terrible. And so we get to eliminate one of my previous errors in the last podcast and say it was amazing because there were only 2 wizards in this box. So it's going to be really evenly matched in the scenario.
Yeah.
Great fun to play.
Very balanced.
Only 2 wizards? That's surprising, but you know what? It must be true.
I bet somebody looked up the keywords and made sure that I was wrong with it because I asked them to.
Yeah, so it is with these wacky magic rules comes a wacky scene, right? And that these 2 wizards are dueling. The ground is sort of erupting, and like the laws of gravity are flipped on their head, and so like the chunks of rock and realm crust, I think they use, start floating. And so now it's not just a regular magic duel; it's a magic duel while you're standing on floating, spinning, crashing rocks and ground and earth, and it's very 3-dimensional in many ways that the game oftentimes isn't, and it's quite the scene as they're casting spells left and right at each other. The armies are disappearing, getting eliminated every which way, and really what it boils down to are these 2 mighty casters trying to ensure that they're the ones left standing. How very dramatic.
Side note, I have a question. How much of the town's population do you think this cult made up of? Like is the people of Quintessence going to wake up tomorrow, just their population being absolutely devastated?
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, actually, we found your friends like a continent away.
And they're just interspersed in like regular jobs and stuff too. It's like, where's my baker? Like, I need bread.
Imagine like you just had a great time last night. You had a ton of alcohol and it was super great. And then you wake up and the brewer is gone and there's no more alcohol left. And you have a massive hangover and you're like, no, this is terrible. I can't fight this hangover by having more alcohol. What did you do to me?
All right. So the basically what it boils down to is these 2 wizards are the last 2 standing. The Cenari Enlightener and the Curseling, who obviously has quite a bit of sorceress oomph behind him using the Treachlet casting spells. It comes to a head. The story ends. How does it end? Who comes out on top? What do we find out at the end here?
Well, there's actually a really great plot twist. So essentially, to answer to your question directly, there is no canonical ending, right? These things are like you and your opponent decide what happened. But that being said, there is a little narrative thing here on the last page, right, where the pitch battle profiles are. And to put it really shortly, we learned that War Widow, the main Lumineth leader that we've been following, is one of the clones of the person whose tomb this has all taken place in. So like this person existed many moons ago, created a whole bunch of clones, and then one of them found a group of people or Tzeentch cultists on their way to raid her own tomb, or at least one of her clones. And so we basically get the heroic, like, I don't know, I am no man, and like she just goes ballistic and murderates him real hard. But it's in doing so, it is revealed that she is in fact, what was their name again?
Sarandua.
Sarandua. Yes, I'm sorry, that's a hard one to pronounce.
But it was like Sarandua number 18.
Yeah, the 18.
Yeah,
right. We're like, oh, there was only 5. Oh, nope, there was actually 18. And also, that character got punked super early. She was also a twin on a clone. Oops. Like, you live for 1,000 years. Yeah. And then your sister calls raid, and then you go and like meet them, and you get punked. Like, I mean, like to live how many thousands of years just to get punked by a curseling is just not a great ending for that character. Let's be honest.
Could be worse. So Paul, when you said 5 earlier, you were pulling one over on us.
I mean, I literally was reading the book here, and it said there was only 5. I just don't know what happened.
Listeners, you can't trust what Paul says. Just let this be a reminder to you.
I mean, you should have known that by now, but like, yeah, let's just repeat it again.
So we talked about this before, but this quote still throws me for a loop, though. At the end, isn't that the curseling yells out as sort of he's being destroyed to what we then find out later is Sarandua the 18th. But he says, "This next cycle shall not be so kind, Elathian," as it screeched as it fades away. And so he references the cycle, and I'm still not. I mean, I think it's vague or intentionally not specific, but there's apparently some cyclical nature to this battle of theirs, and I don't know that we know much more beyond that, but how very interesting, how very tantalizing.
what she did is she made a curseling, but only 2 trenchlets. So it's just basically 2 things that can't move and can't do anything that just dissolve into ectoplasm, which is like a terrible way, but also an awesome way to kill the bad guy in the story. So one of the things that I loved about this battle box in particular, because I'm obsessed with these battle boxes, I've already said multiple times, is that we didn't get kind of like a basic, this is what Lumineth are, this is what Arcanites are. What we got this introduction into this specific part of Hysh, and then we moved to another part of Hysh, and then when we got the standard, like, this is what a unit is, it was actually pertaining to the characters in the box, and it was a little interesting because we hadn't heard that before. Sometimes we get a little bit of redundancy when we're talking about the characters.
Oh my God, yes.
But in this one, a lot of it was made sure that the narrative is moving forward. And so when we got to the scenarios, they're also interspersing the narrative. And I love that they actually codified it and said, this is narrative play rules. This is how we play narrative play. Here's 3 scenarios to play if you're playing a narrative play with this battle box.
Yep.
And it was super fun because they started out the way that battle boxes usually do, so that you don't include every model in the box in the first game. You add it in later when you have a more full battle and to come to the conclusion of the story, which I really, really enjoyed. It felt a lot more contextual, and it felt a lot more intentional than previous battle boxes have. So I loved that choice.
What is your favorite of the 2-player battle boxes they've put out? I'm just curious, just to compare.
So my favorite is actually, I cannot remember the name of it, but it's the Sylvaneth versus Gloomspite Gits one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Loon Spire or something like that.
Loom Curse.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. And the reason why I love it is because it created this own little world where there was a Sylvaneth civilization living underneath Scrappa Spill or super close. And the whole twist of the story was that the Sylvaneth had a realm gate into Hysh. And so they would stare into the realm gate, and that would make them more intelligent as they contemplated the mysteries of Hysh. And so they became super intelligent Sylvaneth, facing these absolutely crazy and deranged Gloomspite Gits as they, bounce in on these squigs. And I just thought it was a super cool little story, again, that you would find in one paragraph in a battle tome, but to find it extended and find it improved was just super engaging for me in particular.
And what I love is how few models it takes to tell some of these stories. I said you can make any of these yourself. Like, anyone who buys these boxes and actually plays full AOS games of 2,000 points knows this is not a full army, right? It's a starter, or a supplement, but it's not a full army. And yet here with partial armies, we're taking entire story arcs based on, stuff we'll see inside the battle tome. So I thought it was a great set.
Right on. Very cool.
One little detail that I hadn't mentioned yet is that there is a cool little throwback again in the second part of the book, where there's a little box out and it talks about Iliatha, and it kind of talks about clones and how they're terrible, and we haven't figured out that this is the way we need to do it, right?
Yep.
It's kind of a throwaway box. At the bottom, there's a statement that says, Archibald Lazerne, High Magister of Settlers Gain. I love this box out because Archibald Lazerne is a character that we've heard about before. He was in Broken Realms, Techless. And they actually had a box set released that was 2 two Cities of Sigmar Luminarchs in a box. And then one of the characters was assembled as an individual character. So this is a named character that we have to have a model released and we have artwork for. And if you remember from Broken Realms Techless, where they had 2 Cities of Sigmar or more, Luminarchs show up to concentrate the fire to actually kill Nagash. He was the character that was mentioned. And the kicker is, this wasn't the first time that we've heard of Archibald Lazerne. There was actually a short story leading up to Broken Realms about a student that was in Zintil that was learning from a professor who was called Archibald Lucerne. And Archibald was super negative about the Lumineth. And then he disappeared for like a day. Then he came back and he decided that the Lumineth were perfect people and we need to obey them in all ways because they're amazing. So the implication in the short story is that he's been mind wiped by the Lumineth. He went up to one of those little crystal geode cages that they have floating in the sky over Zintil, over Settler's Gain, and was re-educated. Pick what word that you want for that. Then, after that happens, he leads this charge with the Lumineth to take and kill Nagash through Teclis's instruction. But at that point, he's just a war magi. First he's a professor, then he's a war magi. But in this little box out, it says that he is now the High Magister of Settler's Gain. And because I just read God's Bane, that is the most powerful human in Settler's Gain. So this character that we literally don't have rules for and is kind of this little side thing, we get this pullback to move from professor to war magi to high magister. And I love that we know who he is and we know that he's been mind wiped and he's completely controlled by the Lumineth themselves. And it was just a little touch that really threw me for a loop because I love how much care and attention that you put into it. Again, that you looked up and said, I'm not just going to make a little reference, I'm going to actually include the previous lore. And again, I love that the lore is deep enough that we can find characters to include when they have these little box outs. It was fantastic and amazing.
I love the fact that you are directly addressing the person who wrote this.
Yeah.
In that we're definitively sure that they are listening right this very second.
Oh, of course they are. Of course they're listening.
To that end, I'll say, hey, thanks from me to you.
You did us a solid. Thank you.
Respect. All right, very cool, very neat. Any other thoughts? I want to jump into some of the special rules that come through fighting these battles in the Arcanova Trove Iliatha, which is this region where the fights actually took place. The rules are reflective of this, of this lore, of this background that we're seeing here. And I wanted to see if you guys had any favorites. I guess that's the prompt right there. I just said it. So did you guys have any things that jumped out at you in these realm rules that sort of colored the region where these fights were happening? What you liked about them?
I didn't really. I kind of expected more. I do like the, what is it called? Arcane Volatility. You can use this command ability at the start of your hero phase. The unit that receives this command must be a wizard until your next hero phase double the result of a casting roll for that wizard, which is like, that's rad. But other than that, like it didn't have any crazy rules, I don't think. I mean,
sure. Well, it's neat because I think some of the rules play off each other a little bit, and maybe even specifically the arcane volatility. A lot of what the rules that we see here, whether it's the special like region rules or other command abilities that can be given, are really focused on mages and magic and casting and things like that. And so, as we found that this is a region that was racked by the Spirefall, and it's essentially a rough shape, but it's still like, I don't know if it's soaked or it's awash with magical energies. We find that the echoes of the Spirefall show that there's still like the echoes of that downfall still linger in this region. And casting spells is an innately dangerous thing because there's all sorts of power here, as we found for your arcane volatility. But if you use too much of it and you cast too powerfully, you run the risk of hurting yourself, which is, very reminiscent of like power. What is the power overwhelming or whatever it was in 8th, where like you cast too hard and then you hurt yourself.
Oh, yeah, unstoppable force or whatever.
Or something. Yeah, there you go. Or irresistible force. Nope, I'm already forgetting what it's called. Anyways.
Didn't play fantasy. That's my excuse. I don't know what yours is.
It is irresistible force. You're absolutely correct.
Okay, there you go. So I mean, it's reminiscent of stuff like that. So like, sure, you have the opportunity to there's the realm is awash with this magical energy, but you use too much and you're going to hurt yourself. And then also there's this command ability where you can there's the secrets of the past of this region, right? It's awash with secrets. There's all sorts of stuff that lay buried just underneath the surface, and should someone be brave enough to conjure magic here, you're dwelling in this unknown realm, right? This is power that is unfamiliar to anybody who are walking, spending time in this region. Yeah, exactly. So that it allows you to continue to cast extra spells, right? So again, like there's plenty of opportunity to be incredibly powerful and use this magic to your benefit, or to your enemy's detriment. But you still run the risk of hurting yourself, which I thought was, between all these different rules, really lend themselves to that like narrative, which is pretty jazzy. Paul, did you have any standouts here that caught your attention?
Yeah, I really like the United in Purpose rule. Start of your charge phase, 2 friendly units are within 6 inches of the other. You can make 1 charge roll to determine the charge distance for both units in that phase. Not that it's like, oh, it's the coolest rule and it's the best thing ever. It's a fun rule and I really enjoy it. But it highlights something that I really enjoyed about the writing in this narrative, which is that we have the Venestrati and we have Quercatine, and then we have Denasia War Widow and we have Leotha. And it's revealed at the end of the book that Denasia and Leotha are twins. But then we also have the Curseling, who is kind of a twin with himself, but we have these 2 characters, Venestrati and Quercatine. And then even when we go to the actual battle line units, we have the Arcanites that are 10 models, and then the hero has a Vulture that does his bidding. And then we have the Lumineth archers, who are 10 models, and then they have a Hawk that do their bidding. I like the reflection of the 2 units together, and I like the twins theme that they kind of wrote into the story and also put into the models themselves. And so I enjoy that was a narrative that was put in the rules as well. I enjoyed that a lot.
That's a good call out.
Paul, what a great segue, because, hey, how about we spend some time talking about the 2 factions or the armies or the things that we've discovered as it relates to the Lumineth and the Tzeentch forces here. And what better way to dig into them than by bringing up some listener questions that listeners from our Discord have asked us. And so just as an aside, for those of you who are interested in asking questions on the Moral Realms, what you need to do is you need to hang out in our Discord all the time at www.themoralrealms.com.
Never sleep.
Discord. Do not sleep. That's the last thing you need to be doing, because if you're sleeping, you're not sitting there watching when I ask, hey guys, we're going to be recording an episode. Would you like to ask any questions? If your eyes are closed and you are snoozing, you'll miss that message and you won't have the chance to ask your burning questions that are deep within inside your chest. The fact that you can even sleep at all while you have those questions inside you is a miracle. I don't understand how it works. So hang out, ask your questions, and you'll get read on the show like we're going to read right here. So first things first, let's tackle the Tzeentch side of things first. And it's worth noting that there's this new old unit or hero in this sport. It's this Curseling. We've had a Curseling model before. We've got a new updated version of it currently. And so Chrisling from the Discord asks, are we back to the Curseling, in caps, a unique character like in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, or are there still multiple Curselings like in AOS? We've hinted at it, but we can answer that question directly here, folks. Is there a singular Curseling, or are there multiple Curselings in Age of Sigmar?
All of the Curselings, multiple. It's a status, not it's an affliction, really, than it is,
or a blessing. I mean, it depends who you ask. But yes, there are multiple ones. So we are no longer dealing with Village the Curseling, which is what the character was named, right?
Is he an interesting character, or is it just kind of a side thing?
I just know him by name. That's as far as I got. Though I do believe they're releasing him in Total War. If not already, then soon. I think I just saw that somewhere. Again, I don't really play that either, but I do keep tabs on when they come up with new stuff. But the concept was cool enough, not to put words into GW's mouth, but I believe they were digging the idea enough that they wanted to keep that model in perpetuity into Age of Sigmar, and so they've updated it furthermore to really cement its place in the Mortal Realms. So very creepy. Chrisling also asks, what items is Tzeentch looking for in Hysh? Does it relate to the current main storyline in Gur?
No, it doesn't relate, but he's looking for guns, bombs.
Right? And although like weapons and powerful, artifacts, I don't know that anybody knew what they were looking for directly or specifically. The very nature of the things lost in the realms is they didn't know what was out there. It's just a matter of, we'll stumble upon what we can find. And so I don't think anybody specifically expected to find that prism that they did. They just knew something was going to be powerful out there, and it was going to be bad news for whoever they pointed and shot at. So that's what we found. To your Acarian had asked to relate. Sorry, let me pause to give it its due diligence. Listener Acarian asked a related question, which is to say, what is the impact of the Era of Beast on Tzeentch's agenda? Whether I'll say this is me editorializing, whether in this book or the story at large, do we think that the era of the beast has any effect on Tzeentch whatsoever? What do you guys think about that?
No.
No, I mean, not particularly yet. I'm really hoping the new battle tome explains how it affects him, but nothing really concrete yet.
Agreed. Though, is it ever anything concrete with Tzeentch, right? Like, can you conceive of a concrete, he's so mercurial that both always affects Tzeentch and never affects Tzeentch.
Yeah, I could see some lore tidbits like the Bray tribes are more rambunctious than ever or something like that. But
that's true. The more bestial elements of a Tzeentchian like army would the Zangors for sure. Good point.
Yeah. I would love them to tie back into the Incarnates, because back when I mentioned a little bit earlier about the Ifriti, the Incarnates were also models that Games Workshop made back in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. So we had an elemental of fire and we had an elemental of Gur, which coinkadinkly, if you've been watching Warhammer Plus and you saw the latest Age of Sigmar animation, there was a spot-on recreation of the Incarnate of Gur that was released by Forge World as one of the models that's in the animation. So I like that we're dipping back into previous design and bringing it into Age of Sigmar without having to make it an old world recreation. I enjoy that quite a bit. So the Kron spine is not what the models were sculpted to be before, and we don't have to be like, oh, it's from the old world. No, it's just Age of Sigmar, and that's totally okay and totally fine, and we're going to have fun with it. So super cool.
Very cool. Another question related to Tzeentch, patron of the show, thank you very much, Dog Tired. They ask, do you think Tzeentch is happy? And he suspects that he must be. Maybe this is related, maybe it isn't, but what do you guys think? Do you think Tzeentch is happy?
I think he's like a Gordon Ramsay. Like, he's got a whole bunch of people in the kitchen all working feverishly, like against one another, kind of like, his show. But he himself is kind of enjoying it. Like, he's had a bit to drink. He feels like cussing a few times. He's having a good time. Everyone else is miserable. But
I have never heard that comparison. I don't know if this is a comparison you bring out regularly, or if this is a first.
Oh, I say it all the time. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
My name is 2+ Stuff, and Tzeentch is like Gordon Ramsay. It's just they go together.
Delightful. Paul, do you think Tzeentch is happy?
Sure. As far as any immortal god who dwells and exists off of the terrible emotions of humans can be happy, sure, we'll go with yes.
That make me happy. I think I said this before, but I'll say it again. I think Tzeentch is happy because, according to him, all of this is going to plan. This is going exactly the way he planned. And if that were the case, how could you not be happy, right? And so whether or not that's true is up for debate. But if things are going his way, I'm sure he's got there's a sly grin on that dude's face.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift gears. We'll head over to the Lumineth side of things. And so another patron of the show, Tyromancer, he asks, how does the LRL, the Lumineth hero, so that is the Cenari Enlightener, differ from a lore master in the lore? So what do you guys think? How does this Enlightener differentiate herself from either the lore master, or how does she make her mark? How is she unique in the Lumineth range?
Yeah, I struggled with this last time too. To be honest, I think she's just a super cheap Cenari hero. Like, that's her main selling point. Lore wise, there's not like a concrete. I mean, they give her like the fluff of like, yeah, she's really good at magic. Like everybody else is.
Who isn't? Jeez.
I enjoyed she's an enlightener, and I'm going to enlighten you by killing you, but it's totally okay because I'm going to enlighten you. Like, yeah. So I enjoyed that quite a bit, but. Yeah, she's still a Lumineth Realm Lord spellcaster. She does kind of cool things in the rules. And again, the best head that we have for any model in Forever. But it's a little bit hard to parse. It comes down to, my understanding, is one who studies and one who's intended to go out and educate those who are ignorant. And so it seems a little bit more like a punishment-based character as opposed to a learning-based character.
Those who can do and those who can't teach, or in this case, those who can't enlighten. Yeah, so I had a hard time nailing down. Like normally they do. Sometimes they even go overboard. They being GW in terms of like trying to identify an identity for models, right? Where they really like shoehorn or like silo a thing where like it's written on their face exactly what their theme is, or like generally what their concept is for something across their whole range. And I think that's probably the goal, right? Like, is the idea is like at a glance you should be able to like discern what something's like theme or like what its core is. It should tell a lot. Like it should tell the story just by looking at the model. That's why they're such a great models companies, because they can do that so well. However, I have a hard time coming up with what the theme is for this enlightener. Sure, the term enlightener, into what Paul was just saying, is I guess there's some element of teaching baked into it, but beyond that, like there's no slap you in the face, obvious thematic element to this thing. She doesn't have a paintbrush and she's like calligraphying something, or I'm trying to think what the other ones are like.
She just literally does have a paintbrush and is literally writing in the room.
Come on, give me some credit. I know I do a lore podcast, but she doesn't have the sorrow veil over her face where she's like absorbing. Like, I mean, see, all this stuff is like very like not concrete, but contained theme. Whereas this gal, she's holding the rune, and I don't know that I even talk about the rune that she's holding all that much, and so. Or like beyond just like a couple like sentences maybe referencing it. So all that to be said is that I don't know how she differentiates herself beyond maybe the fact that she does not differentiate herself. She feels generic. Now that may be because they might not dedicate too many lines to her in this particular book, and maybe the battle tome that is presumably is coming will spend more time deep diving into like really getting to the core of what this thing is, because I didn't see it all that clearly in this book here. That's what I think.
Well, the only thing is that she's holding a rune, and that rune has a special rule that I think allows you to duplicate spells.
Oh,
but that's kind of hard to parse from. Cool. I'm holding a rune to I have a special ability that.
Sure. And there's also some element of like wounding her also wounds you too, but that's not baked into like what the model is, right? Like she's not wearing that on her sleeve, or if she wears it on her sleeve, and oops, now you're wearing it on your sleeve too. Mm-hmm. Ouch. All right, next. Let's keep them coming. Well, back to patron of the show, Dog Tired. They ask, are Lumineth portrayed any differently than they usually are?
Nope.
Remember this being a short answer.
No, arrogance, nope. Turds, and no, that's about it.
I hear a second nope. I'll third that nope. Nope, they're pretty standard at this point. Aloof. I mean, the one exception maybe being that Harkiran, like drunken master guy. He's a little different, but like we've seen him before, and by no means is he indicative of the Lumineth as a whole, I wouldn't say. Dr. Howard also asked any insight into the techless side of things or any of the other elements. Not really.
He's a bad HOA manager. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, it's true. You gotta call Paul up. He'll set you straight.
Deadbeat dad level deity with the deepkin.
And then, all right. So those are the essentially the two factions, or the questions that folks had about those factions in this book. Do you guys have any additional interesting tidbits that you want to bring up before we wrap it up with some additional listener questions, and then we'll close her out? Any more things you guys want to?
I have exhausted my depths of lore tidbits. I'll be honest. You've exhausted us too. Boom, gotcha. All right, a few more listener questions.
Oh my gosh,
it was right there.
Y'all are savage to one another. I love it.
It's allowed.
We family. All right, so a few more listener questions that not specifically pertaining to anything else that we've talked to up above. All right, Darth Alec had a couple good ones, and I wanted to ask him here. Darth Alec asks, how do you feel these boxes contribute to the overall lore? I feel like we've dabbled in this question, but do you guys have any additional thoughts about how these boxes contribute to the lore at large? Any thoughts?
The one thing I can say is that they definitely fill the world out by making good use of that map and stuff that we talked about, how they're kind of filling out locations and names to people. But that being said, it doesn't affect anything with a major story arc, like overall. So, which I like. Not everything can be pushing stuff, dramatically forward. So I like it.
Yeah, I can't see them picking up this storyline and pushing it forward to make the game go somewhere else at this point. But sure. Yeah, it's a self-contained storyline. It feels like.
Yeah, I mean, when these boxes do contribute to the overall lore, I do like it. I think the Arena of Shane's one like picks back up in a setting where we've seen before in Harkiran, and I think Shadow and Pain kind of touched on the Broken Realm stuff. So I do like when they tie in, but like aren't necessary reading per se. This box set doesn't even do that much. Although, I mean, in some ways it shows the effects of sort of a post Spirefall Lumineth society or present day Lumineth society, but it doesn't necessarily tie into major stories, as we've talked about before. I like when they do, but I don't think it's necessary. So I like this one just fine, even though it doesn't tap into those bigger overall lore story beats. Another question for Darth Alex Day. Yes. What do you feel about nearly every book release now being preceded by a duo box? How do you guys feel about, from a release perspective, that these boxes keep coming out before the Battle Tomes do? What do you think?
I've never been a massive fan, to be honest with you. The fear of missing out as a business strategy has never been interesting to me. But I mean, that being said, like they're great if you know it's a faction you want to do. And so that's definitely an area that I will always like push people towards. Like, if you think in the next year that you're going to want to do anything with Lumineth or Tzeentch, like, it's a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Paul, what do you think? How do you feel about these boxes coming out before the Battle Tomes do?
I love the stories in the battle boxes. I've loved them for a long time, and I really enjoy them. So anything that gives me that lore is going to be an immediate bonus. I don't necessarily want to buy all the models for the army, but I did read this book, and it made me want to buy the models, even though I was like, oh, I don't need these models. It's okay. I don't collect these armies. I'll be totally fine.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, like, it was absolutely a success for me reading through it. But I don't have a problem with them releasing these battle boxes, because it's just another way to get a different collection of models. Because they're not the same models that you then start collecting. And, hopefully you'll get them for like a decent price, and maybe you'll split 2 boxes and then you can double up. Like, yeah. So I'm totally fine with them. It doesn't bother me either way.
I am the last person to ask whether or not these boxes are a good idea or not, because it's one of the few things that I like actively, definitely not few things that I actively like collect. And so now it's in my psyche, and I get like a huge dopamine hit whenever they come out with new ones. And so, like, these are exactly, you talk about the business model of fear of missing out. I am fear of missing out embodied. I wake up in cold sweats because I worry I just missed out on something. And so because of that, I am a terrible advocate for the listeners here. So I love every second, every time the new ones come out. I think there's probably going to be another one when they do the 2 Destruction Army books that are presumably coming out later in this month. I'm looking forward to that one too. Keep them coming. Please don't ever stop. And then the stories that come along with them are cool too, I suppose. But really, just give me that sweet cardboard box insert so that I can put them up on my wall, right?
Oh my gosh, I love it.
God, I'm the worst. All right, so and then Darth Alec also asks, is it worth picking up the lore section of out of production boxes? So those boxes that came before, is it worth picking up those lore sections? I think I said this before. I don't know how you would.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't necessarily advocate for it because I don't know how you would do it.
I mean, I bought a few on eBay for sure.
Oh, you might have said, okay, gotcha.
And they can be worth it so long as you know what you're getting. You know what you want out of it. Usually they're going to be like $5 or something like that. And if all you're looking for is some cool pictures and a story, yeah, why not? I wouldn't pay anything more than that.
I'm surprised that somebody is selling them for $5. I guess I've never looked at. Wow.
Yeah, store owners will buy a whole bunch of boxes and then throw all the contents up individually on eBay.
Oh, I see. I guess that makes sense. Plus, there's probably plenty of people who just want either just the models or the rules, and they don't care about the books. And I don't like those people. As
people.
Yeah, dear listener, if that's you, I was just kidding. I like you.
He's not
plenty. Wink, wink. So okay, interesting. So yeah, if you want to go and get them, I suppose if they're definitely worth $5. If that's all they cost, yeah, I would advocate you get them for sure. I recall how I answered this previously. Don't bother spending the $5 and instead start listening to the Mortal Realms story phase, because we're going to start covering them more often, I think, going forward. He promised without guaranteeing any real change in his. All right, we got just one more question, then we'll get out of here. Or one more question, and then we'll wrap her up. So Akarian asks, is there any hint on which chaos deity is benefiting the most from the current setting? Well, I recall that I was going to actually ask this earlier, and I still didn't do it. Any hint which chaos deity is benefiting the most from the current setting, whether that's the era of beasts or any of the other major events that are occurring right now. Do you guys have any thoughts on who's benefiting the most?
I don't remember what I said. I think Khorne. It's never directly stated, but I would imagine Khorne is.
Sure. Beasts fighting bloody. That tracks.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's all sorts of skulls flopping around. That's not how skulls work. Paul, what do you think? Who's
I'm going to go out to left field. I'm going to be like, the horned rat is probably having a field day.
That's what you said, yeah.
It is what I said. And I still agree with it because there's so much chaos. He has his own realm gates. He doesn't care. He'll be fine. I think the realm of beasts is just going to be perfect fodder, especially because Molder is all about building these big beasts until they'll maybe harness and incarnate and build a massive abomination that makes no sense whatsoever, but will look really cool. Why not? Why not have fun with it?
Right, very cool. I think I recall my answer being, I believe he's not a Chaos guy, but I believe Archaon's going to benefit from the setting because he's getting a book later this year, and so there must be a reason. He has to be somehow tapped into what's going on here. Although, despite the fact that the 8 points is getting cracked, 4 different ways lately.
Yeah.
So maybe he's not actually doing all that well, but it remains to be seen. So I look forward to finding out more. All right. That was the last of the questions, at least that I'm going to ask up here. We're gonna close her out with our final parting thoughts. I want to know what you thought about the book. Any final review? Let's leave them with our honest to goodness opinions. Paul, lead the way. Tell us what you thought about this as a whole.
I would give it probably 6 of 8 spider legs. I enjoyed it. It was different than the previous battle boxes, which again I really enjoyed. I liked that they had 2 characters that they included that weren't necessarily their own standalone heroes in the box. I love that they killed a character. I really enjoyed the plot twist, and I really enjoyed getting to know this specific corner of the realm that I didn't know that much about before. So this is what I love and want to see from battle boxes coming forward is just a dedicated little story that is super intriguing, adds to your understanding of the background, and makes you want to fight with models, because why not? That's exactly what it's for.
Very cool.
Absolutely.
Doug, what'd you think of this here story?
Yeah, I have to second Paul's thing. I mean, to me, the battle boxes, they have a few purposes, right? Of enticing you with new models to get into existing factions and then give you a meaningful start to them. And I think for both Lumineth and Tzeentch, there are both great aspects to the models included. And of course, new exclusive heroes, or you get them early at least before everyone else can. And then, as far as this is story and contents goes, it does everything it needs to do, which is give you a little slice of the mortal realms that's not too overwhelming. You're not drinking from a fire hydrant. Gives you a place, an enemy, a hero, and a reason for them to be fighting. And I think that's really what Warhammer is, right? It's just a bunch of crazy fantasy things, and why are you and I at this table playing a game together? And to be able to do all of that for, relatively cheap, meaning instead of buying the kit separately or having to take the time to construct your own campaign, I think it does a wonderful job.
Yeah, right on. Very cool. I echo a lot of your guys' sentiments. So I feel like I stressed this the last time we recorded it, but I haven't stressed it this one, in that this was the first time we've really talked about a battle box story on the story phase. Normally we try to go a little bit bigger, but frankly, we were running out of things to talk about. So we thought we would narrow it down. We would zoom in on one of these smaller stories. And although I've read bits and pieces of previous battle box story inserts, this was really the first one that I've really tried to dissect or break apart to some degree. And in doing so, I like it. I dig it. And I want to do more of it. I love... This is maybe speaking generally for all the battle box stories, in that I love that they fill in the space. We've talked about how it adds, detail to things on the map. Well, it not only just names and cities and things of that nature, but it adds a little bit of flavor to the rules and to the spaces where things get fought, right? And so not only just the armies, and a lot of times it just reflects what we already know from the battle boxes, barring the new units or new heroes that often get added to these things, but it zooms in on these places as well. And I'm a sucker for the places of the mortal realms. Heck, it's the name of the podcast network, right? It's not the denizens of the mortal realms. We are the mortal realms, right? It's the realms and the places and locales within it. 'Cause those I find the most interesting parts. I just made that up. That's not the reason why the mortal realms is called that. And so
I don't eat locale anything. I will let you know, Aaron. So you're completely mislabeling me.
All right. So I'm definitely digging this battle box, and it makes me want to continue to read more as well. That we can get snapshots or glimpses into those little spaces in the maps of the mortal realms, and get to tell cool stories and live through cool stories that are being told to us. I'm also a big fan of that too. I'm much more of a content consumer than I am any sort of narrative creator. All that to be said, I dig it. I recommend reading these things. Like they're great bite-sized stories to fill in the spaces while we wait for the next, big sweeping changes to the mortal realms. It's definitely great opportunities to tide you over as well. So for that, I advocate for it. I guess I'd give it like a, I don't know, 16 out of 18 Sarandua clones, perhaps.
Oh, okay.
So that's where I fall. I mean, it's good, but it's to put it up over the edges if it would actually tie it into the larger storyline, like some of the previous battle boxes did before.
Interesting. So to me, putting it up over the edge would have been like a perfect score. Is I had no intention of playing this army, and now I desperately want to because I have a couple of these models.
Okay.
Did you guys ever have a battle box do that to you?
Well, I have bits and pieces of every army, so it's hard for me to say.
Okay. How about Paul? You're human.
Battle for Skull Pass. Battle for Skull.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had no Night Goblins, and I bought like 8 copies of the box, and I had a massive Night Goblin army. I still have like 600 Night Goblins from Battle for Skull Pass in my collection. And then I ended up with 100 Spider Riders, and that's actually how I started playing Spider Goblins, is because I just had 100 Spider Goblins that I had nothing to do with. And then I ended up being able to go to Warhammer World, and I was like, what can I do here that's super cool and interesting? Oh, I can do a made to order, and they'll give it to me in 2 hours. Sounds great. So I ordered 4 gigantic spiders with Goblin war bosses, and that was the start of my army.
Sure. So Paul's the human one in this scenario. You're trying to tell me Paul's the human in between the two of us.
Yeah, you're the spreadsheet.
Yes, for this exact moment.
You goofball. All right. With that, does anybody have any other final thoughts before we shut her down?
No, I don't think so.
All right, because here it comes. It's time for our reforging. The Sigmar willing will be back soon. Like, subscribe, share, or leave a review. Join us on Discord, drop a tip on our Patreon. Anything you can do will spread the word of Sigmar farther than we can on our own. Chat with us anytime about your thoughts on Twitter at The Mortal Realms. And Doug, where can they find you online?
Yeah, best place is on YouTube, and just look up Age of Sigmar lore or my channel name 2+ Tough.
And Paul, where can they find you on the internet?
They can find me at PJ Shard.
And I'm Aaron. You can find me on Twitter at DosAsos. And you can find all our Mortal Realms shows and content at www.themortalrealms.com. Hey, we recorded it. It's still going. In fact, I can see it. We're going to stop it.
Me too.
Want to stop it right now? Or, this is a little blue for our podcast. And I don't know if this will stick, but for the sake of you guys, I'll probably cut it. But, and then like your one night stand was there, and then you wake up the next morning and they're gone. And then like, it turns out that they joined a cult just to get away from you. And you're like, all right, again? This is the second time.
Rude.
Woof. I get it though. I got one of those faces.
Hey, they were looking for quintessence. They were looking for perfection. And you know what, buddy? You just weren't it.
Yeah.
No.
Not the first time I've heard that. All right. So